Luke Perry is a professor at Utica College. He's on the line with us right now. Good morning, Luke.
Good morning.
So you did some uncovering and discovered that the person that was targeting you and others, including Anthony Brindisi, that was writing letters that were very, very positive when it comes to Claudia Tenney, turns out this person is a staffer on Claudia Tenney's team. Walk us through how you came to this.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, I don't feel a target from Dave Garland / Pat O'Brien. I've had a lot of pleasant correspondence, actually, with Dave Garland, and the few times I've met Pat O'Brien, same thing. But basically, I came to this as someone who covered some national politics for WKTV and the OD, and I'm an election analyst in terms of my scholarship and professional background. And, you know, this congressional race is going to be an interesting one when Brindisi declared. So,
yeah.
At my center's website, the Utica College Center of Public Affairs and Election Research, I started writing a series, The New York 22 Minute, and I've been writing just about every week as analysis on the race. So in terms of this particular story, it goes back to actually part of what I do for the center is promote our pieces on social media, and different people read it, and via Twitter in particular, they'll provide comments or feedback, and one of the regular commentators was an account by the name of Dave Garland.
Yeah.
And we had civil conversations. He'd read my stuff, and I was grateful for that. Sometimes we'd agree, sometimes we didn't agree. But a couple of things early on kind of surprised me. First was the time, right? It was a lot of time that he would spend posting, particularly about my stuff, and it was all different kinds of stuff during the day. And then on his account, it said that he wrote a book. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, maybe he's another political scientist. Looked into it at first. You know, I just noticed there's a self-published book via Amazon, so I said, oh, okay. So then I kind of, at that point, just said, well, I'm not that interested.
Right.
And then the third thing was followers. I noticed that he had Claudia Tenney's personal account following him. He had Hannah Andrews, the communication director, following him. He had prominent journalists who write about the New York 22 following him, and statewide news organizations that write about the New York 22. So all that was a little unusual. And then fast forward a bit, I started getting some questions a few months later from people like the OD who were looking to publish a letter by him, and obviously I talk with the OD regularly. I do some writing for them, and they're asking me about, you know, did you meet Dave Garland or do these types of things? You know, have you ever communicated with him? And it was a reference to a situation in Coffee with Claudia in Cortland, and Dave Garland wrote a letter about it, and anyhow, they're asking me if I could confirm that I know him, and I talked to him, and he was there. And I said, well, no, I've communicated with him on social media all the time. I would think that if he was there, he would, you know, say hello, but maybe not. And that really prompted me to dig a little bit deeper. So I looked on the web, and
so one of the
it's all out there.
So one of the things for you was the fact that it would be logical that if you were in the same room, that he would come up and say hi.
Yeah, that was really kind of unusual because the way it was originally small group meetings, and then just because of scheduling and space issues, everybody went into this room, and so there may be about 20 people, and there were, and I was there, and I was live tweeting, which I've started doing since I was covering the conventions for KTV. Just basically somebody would ask a question, and I tweet what the question is, and then I tweet the response, and I had interviewed many of the people there, too, because that was part of my research for the center. I wanted to see what issues people were, you know, wanting to raise. So anyhow, in that context, I got it, you know, I'm live tweeting, there's people following me, and one of them is Dave Garland, and he's commenting on what I'm tweeting. And come to find out that Dave Garland is actually Pat O'Brien. So he was doing that in this room at Coffee with Claudia, sitting next to the communications director and the chief of staff, and Congresswoman Tenney herself. And that was really quite a surreal moment for me when I put that all together.
Wow. When the bell goes off, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? When the bell goes off in your head, it's
a
like...
complicated situation, right? I mean, this is someone who is a fairly recent college graduate, and I work with that population. So in some ways, I like I said, he's been nice to me, and I feel for him. Obviously, this was not standard behavior and will sort of stain his professional record. I think it also raises a lot of questions in terms of the extent to which he was operating on his own and the extent to which this was something else.
Are you surprised that I have a lot to ask you? Are you surprised, first of all, that the Congresswoman did not come out herself? A staffer has made a statement on it. They have not fired him. Does that surprise you at all?
Well, I won't comment on that because obviously Congresswoman Tenney will make her own decisions. I think the statement surprised me in a lot of ways. First, what didn't surprise me is it was verification, right? She didn't deny that this was going on.
Right.
But there were several inaccuracies in the statement, right? She said that it was on his own time when, in fact, I've communicated with Dave Garland numerous times during business hours, including the incident that I just referenced.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, the statement said that he was asked to delete the account, singular. There's actually multiple accounts. He had multiple blogs. He wrote to multiple papers. All this has been documented. He had multiple social media accounts. So it wasn't just one account.
Yeah.
And then finally, the statement said that he was always civil and polite. And to be clear, he was always, well, for the most part, civil and polite with me. But he also engaged in a lot of name-calling under this guise towards the media, towards others. So, I guess how she responded did surprise me in that regard. And also, there wasn't a whole lot of contrition, and there wasn't any discussion of consequences. So it was kind of short and to the point in some ways, but raised a lot more questions to me.
Think of the irony of some of the fighting dishonesty together. Yet you're living a lie. You have a fake account, and supposedly you're trying to tell the conservative truth. I mean, it doesn't bode well for any conservative out there.
Well, certainly, I think there's been a lot of scholarship and analysis of sort of the post-truth era and what that means, and it's something that, as a scholar and someone who covers elections and is deeply involved in the analysis of them, concerns me. Right? I mean, I think, as I wrote, democracy requires sort of basic transparency and basic accountability, and I think, incidents like this doesn't help in that regard.
Can I just ask, I want you to say something you just said. What did we call it after the Obama? It was the post-what era? Was this supposed to be the post-racial era? What was it? But did you just say it's the post-truth era?
Yes, so that's a phrase that different writers and analysts have used over the last year or so that kind of characterize the deterioration of sort of basic truth in regards to political commentary.
Yeah. Basic truth and figuring out what to believe. What do we believe?
Yeah.
And I think you have to do your work, and you have to kind of dig in, and you have to find a source that you trust, and ask questions. I think people have to do that today.
Luke, can I ask you a question? And I know I'm asking you to kind of assume someone else's identity here, but why not just say I'm Pat the staffer? Here's my take. I'm advocating for a candidate that I believe in. What's wrong with that? Why use the fake name? Do you have any thought on that?
Well, I wouldn't be comfortable speculating in terms of the motivation in regards to Mr. O'Brien and what he was doing. I mean, this is something that goes back for over a year. So he started blogging in this identity in regards to Congresswoman Tenney in the congressional primary last year. He did it through the election, and then he did it through, her time in office. And why at the very beginning when he wrote the book when he was at university and assumed a different name, I have no idea. That's something you'd have to ask him. I'm sorry, I just can't comment on it.
I'd like to rephrase it though, and make it more hypothetical, because I think I pretty clearly understand the motivation for using a fake name, because it sounds like there are all these big supporters out there that are defending the Congresswoman. I think that is pretty evident. However, I'd like to ask more of a hypothetical question. Why not just use your real name? Would it be wrong for a staffer on any campaign, or for any congressperson, or any political person for that matter, to come out in support of your person? Why not just use your real name?
Again, that's a good question. Like you said, it's not unusual for people to what you call sock puppet and assume fake identities.
Yeah.
In regards to social media, it is highly unusual for that to happen. Someone who's a congressional staffer. I mean, I checked with my friends at the Washington Post and 538 and Fox because I wanted to get a sense nationally. I mean, is this something that's happening elsewhere? And that's sort of the big picture. What's intriguing to me beyond the immediate situation is this going to be a new digital strategy that either parties or individual offices employ? And, I hope not.
You say will. I think it already is and has been going on for quite some time, my belief. I want to ask you one other thing, and then I've got Tom who wants to pipe in on this. At one point, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were actually being paid. So he questioned your integrity, that you're being paid by the Brindisi campaign. Is that true?
I haven't seen that. What are you referencing exactly?
I read this. I'll follow up after I can find what I read. Tom is standing by on the line right now. Tom, you're on with Luke Perry. He's a professor at Utica College, and Tom is from New Hartford. Go ahead.
Hi, Luke. Listen, to answer Bill's inquiry as far as why he wouldn't just use his regular name, most publishers will not grant paid staffers or staffers access to letters to the editor.
All right. Okay.
If they know that they are on the staff. I'd like to also mention an incident in our local paper about 10 years ago, where one of their editors got caught sending the same sort of, what do you call it, sock puppet, hidden identity. Misrepresentation letters to the editor, and they fired him so fast it would make your head swim. There's no need right now for me to, mention the fellow's name, but it's well ensconced in the memories of all of us in the journalism business. And so that's the remedy. Also, it's amazing that journalism schools don't drill this into people's heads. When they come through these, or communication schools don't really get into this in their instructions to make sure that people don't do this.
All right. I think that, honestly, though, and I know Luke can speak to this, I really believe they do. We can teach all we want, but somebody who's going to do something and deceive and be deceitful, chances are they're going to be.
Well, that means he's a bad guy.
All right. Well,
period.
Luke, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I think, no, I don't want to comment on characterizing Mr. O'Brien in any way, but I think you're correct. I mean, there are pretty clear journalistic norms in regards to what to do and what not to do, and this is clearly not within those standard norms.
Tom, if I'm not mistaken, you are a...
Tom is gone.
Oh, Tom is gone. I thought he was a Claudia supporter. I'm not sure. I guess it doesn't matter, but he had a strong statement there, and I was wondering what side he was on. Just curious.
Listen, and Luke, if you could, you're already writing weekly blogs on this NY22 race that is more than a year away. It's really incredible and unprecedented that the campaign has started so early. Have you found any other area through recent history where a campaign like this for Congress started so early?
There's none on the top of my head that I could think of. And, for me, it's interesting. It's putting on sort of my electoral analyst hat for a moment, in the sense that, Congresswoman Tenney's in the driver's seat. Incumbents have an incredibly high reelection rate in the House, over 95%. So, she's on the boat, and the more she makes waves in regards to this type of stuff, the more likely she is to fall off. So, yeah. I'm really surprised, as we've talked a little bit in the past, how she's gone negative so early. And it's her race to lose. So that part of this surprises me, where these types of things are happening and really sort of mixing things up well in advance of the actual election.
Yeah, it is really interesting. But I'd like to say I think you did a great job. You showed this is a real great example. I'm sure you're going to have to teach, and you can reference this when you're teaching. A great example of investigative journalism. You did a great job.
Well, that's very kind of you. Unfortunately, I have to go teach a couple of sections of Government 101 where I'm trying to introduce politics and government to students who have no interest in it generally and try to explain its importance. And it's not just a bunch of people out for their own good and being dishonest. So that's going to be a challenge for me today in the classroom as I talk through some of this.
No doubt. And, Luke, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much, and we will talk again.
Thank you.
All right. Pretty amazing, huh? Do you feel the Congresswoman has to come out? She hasn't up to this point. And should this kid get fired?
I guess I'm torn on the get fired. She has to address this, though. It's a member of her team, and she's decided to keep him in light of this.
Mitch and Clinton to comment. Go ahead.
Hi, Bill.
Hey.
Thanks for taking my call. I'll make it quick. I don't know if anyone has ever called in who actually participated in Claudia Tenney's one-on-one sessions or coffee with Claudia, whatever you want to call it. I did participate. I just want to make a couple quick comments.
Yeah.
Okay, number one, I'm a political independent. Some people have said, well, all she did was talk to the people who support her, so obviously they scheduled me, and I'm not. And second, they said, well, she just wants to talk to people who are going to agree with her, and they never asked me why I wanted to meet with her. So when I got there, because they had so many people, we're supposed to be one-on-one for 10 minutes. It was me and another woman. She went on for 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I had 30 seconds left. So I said, Claudia, I just want to give you this. Look at it. We're not going to talk about it now, and I'm going to have to meet with one of your staff members about a serious problem with the state of New York. And, of course, Claudia said, well, wait a minute, I'm a federal official. And what have you done through the state? Have you followed chain of command? So I told her that I had talked with Assemblyman Mark Butler, County Clerk Sylvia Rowan, and they were not able to do anything.
Yeah.
And she goes, okay, then I will do something. And the end result was she called the deputy commissioner in the state of New York for motor vehicles, and I got a phone call back from them saying the congresswoman had called them, and they said, so what can we do? And I went with it from there.
I want to ask you on this. Are you okay with this? Do you think she's handled this properly?
What?
The staffer? This.
You're
going off topic on me here.
I'm not sure because what he did was wrong. I mean, I followed that, and I know what. Yeah. And I have a lot of respect for Luke Perry because I met him at the session and so forth. So should she fire him? Probably.
All right. Okay, Mitch. I appreciate it. Mark says the larger problem this presents for Claudia Tenney is this. Any strong supporters down the line will now be rightfully or wrongfully viewed as potential plants from her campaign. This will have a lasting effect on Congresswoman Tenney.